What statistically improbable thing happened to you? I received my heart transplant after being on the list for only 7 hours. Riding my bicycle on a commercial fishing pier as a kid, I lost control and rode off the edge with a 20-inch drop to exposed rocks at low tide. I tried to stop myself going over by planting my feet on the edge of the pier, but I knew my bike was too heavy. Somehow the bike stopped, halfway over at a 45-degree angle. However, now the seat was in the small of my back, preventing me from getting off, and I couldn't budge it at all to get the bike back up. A fisherman finally ran over to help me, and we decided he would pull me as hard as he could and I'd let the bike fall. I jumped to the side as he pulled me back to the pier, and it worked. However, my bike was still there, not moving at all. When I examined what had happened, there was a piece of rebar sticking out from the edge of the pier, bent upwards in an L shape, and it passed diagonally through the spokes of my front tire and completely wedged my bike in place. It was the only spot on the 300 feet long pier with anything sticking out. I most certainly did not stop myself and my bike from going over. Dude. Damn. So not only could you have gone over the edge, you could have also been impaled by the rebar. I have been hit in the head by live squirrels 3 times in my life, each on separate occasions. Did you have a hat that looked like an acorn? Many years ago I had a terrible day where my then GF broke up with me. Then I did terribly in a final exam for a college class, then I lost my wallet. Finally, as I was doing the Charlie Brown sad walk back home, some random branch broke off a tree as I was walking on the sidewalk underneath it, and the damn thing fell on top of me. It hit me square across the shoulder and knocked me to the ground. I just burst out laughing because it was so ridiculous. After losing an AirPod while skiing, I was able to find it the next run. I lost an earring diving in a deep mountain creek. I paddled in the water over where it fell out, and I shouted, "Watch this," to my GF, and dove down 10 feet to the bottom and blindly grabbed a bunch of tiny river rocks in my fist and swam to the surface and held my fist high triumphantly. I swam to the back to my GF and opened my hand, and it was there with the river rocks. Got attacked by a robin in the morning, then attacked by a hawk 3 hours later. Weird day. Oh, I had a similar thing happen to me. I got bit by a bull ant, then stung by a bee. All on the same bushwalk. To make matters even worse, I went for a surf and cut my foot before I got in the water. I literally just walked back to my car. I was not going to get eaten by a shark that day. I was on a road trip with my cousins in the 80s. One of them kept playing the same song over and over by rewinding the tape and playing it again. The song was "Another One Bites the Dust." After 3 plays in a row, the driver pulls out the tape, says enough, and turned on the radio. Sure enough, that song was playing on the radio right then. That's when you just throw up your hands and let the car swerve into a ditch. Back in community college, people thought I was dead for half a day. I was supposed to meet a friend on campus to go eat. I was running late because my dad wanted me to do something before I left. I don't remember what. I get to campus and there's this fountain, the kind you can walk through or run about and avoid sprays of water. Around the whole fountain is a bunch of police tape. So I kind of think, okay, weird. Then I go to the building where my friends hang out. As I walk in behind one of them, I hear them telling everyone else I killed myself that morning. Turns out that a guy matching my physical description killed himself in the fountain. Between that and what he'd said to someone before doing it, along with my appalling lack of punctuality, everyone thought it was me. I always thought the Mark Twain quote of, "The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated," was badass, but I had never thought I'd have the opportunity to use it. What was their reaction when they saw you? Not me, but a friend. He was a merchant mariner. Lived here in Virginia Beach. He was always calling and texting, posting pics from around the world. One time he'd been out a while. We knew he was heading to Dubai, but didn't know where he'd be after that. 4 months go by, nobody's heard from him. His neighbor, who I was friends with, gets married and goes to Thailand for his honeymoon. He texts me one day and said, "You aren't gonna believe this shit." He said he asked a local where a good local spot to eat was that tourists wouldn't be at. Guy takes him 30 minutes from the beach, to some dive bar, restaurant with no sign, no clearly marked entrance. He said it looked so shady he was afraid he was about to be robbed and killed. He goes in, and it's a legitimate restaurant. He eats, drinks some beers, goes to the bathroom. Out walks my friend, so he took a pic and sent it to me to confirm he's okay. Imagine taking a flight several thousands of miles away, getting away from the tourist areas and going into a local dive bar, and running into your fucking next door neighbor you haven't seen in months. Shit's wild. Something like this is really crazy sometimes. I mean, 1 hour difference would have probably enough for them to miss each other. As I think about it, I wonder how many more occasions like this must have happened where the timing was not right. You only think about the occasions where stuff like this happened. Just imagine how many more occasions like this almost happened. My brain melts. Husband and I visited our old hometown and went to a used bookstore we used to frequent. I picked up a familiar title in nostalgia and flipped it open to find a school student's ID card. The name and photo on the ID? My husband. Turns out his mom had donated books to that store many years before we all moved away from that area. He must have been using it as a bookmark and forgotten. It's not so surprising considering we used to live in that area, but the ID was nearly 10 years old by the time we found it. That book was sitting on the shelf for nearly a decade * untouched, waiting for me to come along and pick it up. Bizarre. Lost my house in civil court. Represented myself and won in appeals court twice. Since my case was unique in this state, my cases were published both times. Moving back into my old house soon. Took a summertime organic chemistry class. 1 month of classes 5 days a week, then a 3-week break, then another month for the second semester. After the break I reached into the box in my closet to grab the textbook where I had hidden it and felt a sharp stab in the corner of my little finger at the cuticle of the nail bed. I was running late to class, so I thought nothing of it. I became ill with profuse sweating and nausea during the day, then violently ill into the night with vomiting and diarrhea and swollen adenoids. Went to the the next morning and they ran every test they could. 2 days later I started having trouble breathing and went to the again. My heart was swollen up half again at normal size, my lungs were swollen, and my kidneys too. Doctors kept me for 2 days with batteries of tests and after 2 days let me go as everything was going back to normal. Then I began shitting what appeared to be a white paste, and this went on for 2 days. At the end of which I noticed that my tongue and the lining of my mouth was almost purple in color, and I had a red streak from the tip of my little finger that during the day extended up to my bicep by that evening. Went back to the and the doctor said he had no clue, but maybe I had been bitten by something venomous. I then thought about the day that the symptoms started and went to that box in my closet, and sure enough there was a little black spider in the box. I asked one of my professors about it and he told me the county health department had an entomology office not far from campus, so I captured the little spider and went on over. The doctor there told me it was just a grass spider and there was absolutely no way it could have envenomated me for 3 reasons. He said they have curved mandibles so they can't hit the human skin. They have soft mandibles so even when they manage to strike the skin the mandible will turn and not break the surface. But most importantly, their venom, which digests the proteins that stretch between the cell walls of animals, gets bound to platelets in the human bloodstream and is almost instantly neutralized. I showed him where the bite was as evidenced by the red streak, and sure enough it was in the corner of the nail bed in very soft tissue of the cuticle where the spider could actually get a strike. He asked if I had some kind of platelets disorder. I made a quick call to the cancer research hospital I worked at in the evenings at that time, and sure enough I had donated platelets the evening before being bitten. A process where they put you on a platelet phoresis machine and extract almost all of your platelets for donation to kids who are in need of them due to having low counts from the chemotherapy. It was at this point that the entomologist started hyperventilating and asking all kinds of questions. He was low-key freaking out. He kept repeating that this was a billion to 1 event and he'd never heard of it before. He ended up getting me to sign some papers so he could have my medical records and published a paper on it. Fun for him, but not so much for me. The white paste that I pooped for 3 days was the epithelial lining of my entire digestive tract, which came out as white pasty-looking individual cells. By the end of the month everything was back to normal, like none of it had ever happened. Interesting side note. When some spiders inject their victims and turn them into liquid that they can then drink, this venom dissolves the proteins that hold cells together by running between the cell walls. These proteins are the only things binding the cells together. Without these proteins we would be reduced to a nasty white, almost liquidy paste. Edit. As it has been asked many times in the comments, I do not possess a copy or link to the paper the entomologist wrote. Nor do I remember which journal it was in. This happened in the early 90s and may have never even been out on the internet. Also, I don't know if that journal even still exists. Can't be that many people reading journals on entomology. Also, he was a PhD in entomology and not a medical doctor, so it wasn't in a medical journal. This is probably the wildest story in this whole thread, my goodness. Glad you recovered pretty quickly, all things considered. I saw an ad on a Pepsi case at a grocery store for a text-to-win contest to see Beyoncé in concert. I figured why not, and sent a text and was entered. A few weeks later I got a text back from the same number that told me I won the grand prize. I ended up winning 2 tickets to Beyoncé's Mrs. Carter World Tour in Brooklyn and $500 on a Visa gift card. Used the $500 for some bus tickets and a hotel down the street from Barclays. The seats were awesome and it is something I'll never forget. While attempting to get medical treatment, the doctor's office ran a pharmacy report on my medical history and prescriptions. My terminally ill brother, whose full name was only 2 letters different from mine and we had the same address and phone number, was on a shitload of narcotics at the time, and through their search they pulled up his report and thought it was mine. They yelled at me and kicked me out of the office saying I was just looking for drugs. I was mortified and very upset, and they wouldn't listen to me when I said it was my brother and not me. I ended up calling the pharmacy board and they called the doctor and explained that since we had the same address, phone number and an extremely similar name, they had to search by social security number. The doctor felt horrible and gave me free treatment, and now he tells that story at conferences he goes to. It was crazy. So of course, I had something happen to me that the doctors or nurses had never come across before. The doctor shared with me the tales of the conferences he spoke at and said none of the doctors there knew it was possible for data from 2 people to be included in the same pharmacy report either. I guess they do now. I underwent a surgical procedure called a stapectomy to improve the significant hearing loss in my good ear. Instead, I ended up completely deaf. My surgical aunt said this has only happened to 5 patients in the US. He was doing research to try to help me afterwards. I don't know how true it is, but hey, lucky me. Picking the slowest checkout lane in the grocery store every single time for the last 40 or so years. I, too, have bad checkout karma. It would be funny if it weren't so annoying. I got a degree after aging out of foster care, smiling face. Hit by lightning. Sort of. Indirectly. Lightning hit a tree near the wellhead while I was doing dishes. Exploded the tree, fried the well and gave me a jolt that made my metal fillings so hot they burned my tongue. Other than that, I was fine. Nearly getting killed by the same reckless, drunk driver twice in 3 years. The first time in 2001, I turned right. Before I completed the turn, a Pontiac Sunfire zipped by going 100 to 110 miles per hour. The second near-death was in the driveway in 2004. I was supposed to pick up my brother from work. This time I didn't. Instead, I hear a noise that could be heard a block away. The drunk driver smashed my car and turned it around 180 degrees. His back was 0.20. He tried running away and the neighbor tackled him. There happened to be a police officer nearby, too. Life comes at you fast. I played softball with the kid when I was 11 years old. Drunk drivers don't want their license. I got bit by a groundhog. I've never researched the odds of getting bit by a groundhog, but it's gotta be pretty low, right? Made a living as a musician all my life. I have all 10 childhood aces. I have grandparent suicides on both sides. I have drug addicts on both sides, severe mental illness on both sides. Somehow I didn't end up dead, commit suicide, overdosed, in a ditch, or without any technical extreme mental illness. I like to think video games and music keep me away from that stuff. Despite what my elementary school and middle school teachers might have believed. I got a college degree in aerospace engineering, one of the hardest degree programs from a semi-decent school. Pretty much beat every statistic in regard to my early childhood outcomes. Make no mistake, all the stuff I went through has left me emotionally crippled, but I mostly get by. I just want to say thank you to everyone that's read this. I really appreciate all the kind words. Also, I'm by no means thriving. It's a constant battle every single day to pick myself up and get up. Got left a written message to call a girl. Mistakenly called another girl instead with the same name. We've been married for 14 years. My college advisor in HS did some bullshit-ass calculations on his computer, flipped the screen around, and it said I have a 1.34% chance of getting into the school I wanted. Guess who made it in that bitch? And I got the degree now too. So you're telling me there's a chance? My friend was going to Ireland to visit her extended family for the first time and invited me along. We had a great time meeting her aunts and uncles, seeing the beautiful sights, etc. On our last night in Ireland, the family all got together for dinner, some rousing laughs, and a general awesome time. Her cousin had been traveling that week and was only in town for one night, and so she and her boyfriend swung by to say hi and bye. They left for the airport to NYC and we went to sleep, getting up at 4 a.m. to catch our own flight to NYC. 2 days later, I had to be in NYC for a job interview. I wasn't familiar with the Wall Street area, so I went extra early just in case I couldn't find it. But as luck would have it, I found it with no problem and had 40 minutes to kill. I had no idea what to do, considered getting food but didn't want to risk staining my clothes or having an upset stomach or anything, so I wandered around a little until I stumbled on the Barnes & Noble bookstore. Thinking this was perfect, I went in and walked slowly through the store looking for somewhere to sit. There weren't any sort of private spaces on the first floor, so I found the escalator and started heading up. As I approached the halfway mark, I see a young couple going down on the escalator. As our eyes meet, we recognize each other, and at the exact same time, as we both met halfway up, down the escalator, we pointed to each other and turned as we passed each other, mouths open in shock. My friend's cousin and her boyfriend. 2 nights ago I had met them for the first time and we had been laughing and sharing food and wine in her aunt's house in Ireland. And now here we are, crossing paths exactly halfway on the escalator. A moment sooner or later and we would have completely missed each other. She quickly came back up the escalator and we chatted about how crazy this coincidence was. I nailed the job interview too because I just felt this surge of right time, right place-ness that meant I was supposed to be there. I was so full of confidence and optimism, I made the whole panel of interviewers laugh and talk comfortably with me and got the job. My twin sister and I hit the same answer to rock, paper, scissors 14 times in a row. My husband thought we were cheating, haha. Gotta love the power of twins. Not me, but my grandfather. Weeks before his 93rd birthday, he was finishing a day of yard work on his farm. He tripped while getting off the lawnmower, and it rolled on top of him. Blades turned off, luckily. He was pinned under it long enough that he was about to slit his own throat to put himself out of his misery, as opposed to freezing to death overnight beneath the lawnmower. Just before he ended himself, he happened to see a crowbar in the yard that he dropped earlier. It was just in his reach, and he grabbed it. He proceeded to somehow lift the lawnmower off of himself with it, slide himself out from beneath the mower, crawl back onto the mower with broken limbs, ride the mower up to the house, crawl up the stairs, and grab his phone to call my dad. I need a ride to the hospital. I think I hurt myself. ETA. The mower was a riding zero-turn style mower, worth a Google if you aren't familiar. It rolled on its wheels on top of him as he stepped off of its platform. With gas and the machine combined, it weighed just under 600 pounds. He survived this incident, but unfortunately, it led him down a domino effect of events that led to his death this year. This is the dumbest story ever, but the one time in my entire life that someone asked me if I wanted to buy a pair of shoes at work is the day, a few hours later, that the sole of my shoe came off. So yeah, I bought the shoes. Coworker's husband bought wrong size shoes and not sure why they couldn't return them. Your coworker cut your sole when you weren't looking, boom, easy sale. Correctly guessed all the numbers of the California lottery 20 years ago upon arriving in my hotel room and turning on the TV at the drawing time. I keep running into the same ex every few years, no matter where I go on the planet, 30 plus years. We have equals not equals stayed in touch. Well, you haven't. He evidently has.